I took it off. I'm like,
oh, so you went with the healing color instead of the power color. I went with green. That's the helping color. I figured.
hello, welcome you guys to our webinar series. We're so glad you joined us from everywhere. We're excited to train you tonight. If we haven't met, I'm Karen Mayer Cunningham, special education boss, training everyone that sits at the 504 IEP table to navigate and negotiate successful student outcomes. We're super excited about our trainer that we have on tonight. People always ask me who trains me. Very few people train me, but I had the gift of meeting Sandy 10 months ago. It's been the most amazing 10 months of her life. And her training technique, the skills that she has and possesses, and the way she delivers them, and really these protocols, processes, and practices change outcomes. And so we're super excited to have her to teach us tactical empathy when negotiating difficult meetings, which of course, we might have once in a while in an IEP meeting or a 504, or when we're meeting with people, just people in general. Not me and you. This is for other people. So, so this is the wonderful Sandy Hein. So, she's a former hostage negotiator, police officer, educator. She's an author, so many things. So, Sandy, would you please introduce yourself and welcome to our training?
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. I am a former police officer from Alexandria, Virginia, which is why I was looking for Virginia people. I did 23 years there, 10 of those as a hostage negotiator, and injured myself. Not a good story, so we're going to skip that. But so then I had to retire with a medical injury and got lost for a little bit, and then discovered my local high school, where I went and became the criminal justice instructor and created their criminal justice program. Part 1 and part 2, I was there for 6 years. When COVID hit, I had already agreed to go with the Black Swan group in 2020. So when COVID hit, I pretty much told them I can come early because elective classes, no one was coming. So I started with them. I've been full-time with the Black Swan since right after COVID, right when COVID hit, basically in 2020. It's the best job in the world. I love it. I get to meet people like Karen. I get to go all over the place and train people in these wonderful techniques that I learned as part of being a hostage negotiator with the police department.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. So if you guys don't know what Black Swan is, it is a company founded by Chris Voss. He's the amazing author who wrote the book Never Split the Difference. So certainly you can get that in our link. It's in our Amazon store. It's an amazing book. It's a must read for everybody that I train. And the skills have changed my life. They've changed how I interact and work with people on a daily basis. And it's going to change how you interact and really get successful outcomes. We come in at such different places in an IEP meeting. I think one of the unique things about working with Sandy is that she's a former educator. And so, Sandy, if it's okay, we'll just get right into it. We have some questions that came ahead of time. One of the things that I train, and I get to train internationally, is that I train on 2 things: that we do what the data says, what the data shows, and what the law says. And so, until I met you, I thought I had it all down. And then that's why I always go to, oh, maybe I don't have anything down. And just the way that you delivered this information, I was like, I literally never thought about it that way. And so kind of tell us about when you go into an IEP meeting and somebody, for purposes of today, let's say somebody brought an amazing advocate. Did you ever have an occasion to sit in IEP meetings where they were anything other than lovely?
I don't know. Am I supposed to honestly answer that question?
We prefer honest. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the first few I went to, I didn't really no one told me what was happening. So I was like, what is this? What is this IEP meeting? I don't even understand what it is. I don't know what's happening. Am I supposed to be doing something? I'm supposed to be bringing something? What do I do? And I went in there and it was very, very cold and very clinical. And it was very just like, boom, 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 boom. The mom was there. The mom didn't speak English. There was someone there trying to translate, but then it was very confusing. It was almost like it was a check mark on a box is why we had this meeting. And it was upsetting to me because I thought, what is what did we go? And the second one was marginally better. Then the third one I learned, if I start saying what I want to say about this student and introducing some things that I know that I've observed, maybe this will open this up a little bit because this is very clinical and it's not helping the student at all. So, because they give me a chance to talk. And the first 2 times I was like, I didn't know, am I supposed to say something? Much like I was when, do you want me to be honest? It was like that. So The third time when they came to me, I said, well, yeah, I have so-and-so in class, and this is what happens when he or she comes in. This is what we do. This is what they're doing in there. I don't have problems with them behavior, whatever the IEP situation is. Sometimes it was behavior, sometimes it was learning disability, some different things. And so I would speak to how that child overcomes that in my class. And that got the meeting going. And then I noticed that then the advocate was like, ooh, somebody's actually going to talk about the kid and things that work and things that help. And so then I found that opened everything up. Once I got it from being so clinical and actually demonstrated that, okay, I'm a teacher that cares, and I'm a teacher that wants to give the student what they need. And then I would ask questions and I would just pull everybody in, because that's what made the difference.
Right. So when, as an advocate, we represent families that have children with disabilities nationwide, but most families, there's 7.5 million children in America have a child with a disability and IEP. They just go in there blindsided and they're met with 4, 5, 6, 12, 14 other people just sort of looking at them and here's page 1. And did you get that, Sandy? And did you get that? So for purposes, let's say that a mom is watching the training tonight. What would you offer to them as they prepare to go into the IEP meeting?
I would say listen very carefully to everything that's said, for one thing, because I notice what they do is, especially when they have a parent who doesn't speak English, they breeze through that stuff really quick, and they don't even allow like proper time for the translation to kick in for the parent to be able to interact. So I would say if you're a parent, listen as carefully as you can, and don't be afraid to stop the process. Hold on. And then you'd use the no oriented question. Would you be against me asking a question? Because then they're basically giving you permission to interrupt their whole spiel that they're doing. And then you can ask a question if you have a question, or you can just make an observation. And the way we like to talk about things is we call them labels. You can say it seems like, it sounds like, it looks like, or it feels like. And in doing that, you're not necessarily asking a question because you're not using a question buzzword, which makes people react a different way. So if you say, it seems like you feel my student needs this, or my son or daughter needs this, and this. And that way it's a way of pointing out something that you want to question, you want to know more about without actually asking them any questions. And what happens is magic happens. And Karen, you've realized this, but just you use a label, people just speak to you stream of conscious. They just start talking because you're not asking them a question. When you ask someone a question, they have time to defend against whatever that question is. They have time to, think about it for a second and concoct an answer that puts you in a box. So if you use a label instead, they just start giving you information. And then you just kind of sit and listen, and you can carry that on. Once you learn this technique of labeling and mirroring, you can drag that conversation to the point where you're getting all kinds of information out of them that otherwise they probably would not have given you.
Oh, and that's a great point. A lot of my families, and even sometimes me, they will say, I'll say, well, Sandy, you have to provide this special education. Why did you do that? Why didn't you deliver special education? And while that's not an incorrect statement, and as somebody who's a little assertive when I'm awake or sleeping,
I was going to say,
why is that? Not that it's wrong, but why is that not better?
Yeah. Well, when you ask someone why, it makes them defensive. It goes back to when we're kids and we're coming up, and you do something wrong and your mother looks at you and says, "Why did you do that?" And you go, you get defensive. And so when you ask someone why, it automatically makes them feel like they have to justify their existence. So if you just avoid that why question and ask it in a different way, you'll get a better response and you'll get less defensiveness. So one of the ways I like to, basically a different way to say why, is it seems like you have a reason for doing this. It seems like you have a reason for saying that, asking that, stating this, wanting that, whatever, insert verb here. So it seems like you have a reason for is magical. If you can get by with never answering another question and always just say, seems like you have a reason for wanting to know that or asking me that, then they'll explain, because people quite frankly ask terrible questions, and not in a malicious way, just because they think they have to make sure that you're not going to be put out by what they're asking. So they ask you a stupid question instead of just asking you what they want to ask you. So if somebody asks you a question, just say, seems like you have a reason for asking, because then they'll get right to the point. Oh yeah, I was wondering, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, why didn't you just ask that? But that's just the best way to do it without asking why.
And I think one of the best things I learned from you and Derek and Tori and all the trainers is you are the biggest egotist if you think that you know what somebody else is thinking. If I think
Yep.
that when I get into a meeting with Sandy and she's the principal, if I assume or think that I know why she's acting that way, you have no idea what's going on with people. And so
Yep.
since I've learned these skills and I keep learning them, I keep participating, I keep going to the training, and we're gonna give you a QR code at the end so you guys can participate digitally, in person, private coaching, they have it all. So I almost feel like I have to hold up a sign and go, I'm about to do something because I've never done it. In 57 years before I met them, I'd never done it. So I was like, and it almost trips people. Like you can literally physically see them tripping up. And you talked about two things that I've learned to be so much better at. I'm getting better every day. No oriented questions. Would you be
Hmm.
opposed to, would you be opposed to providing the student more reading instruction? Would you be
Hmm.
opposed to extending the compensatory time for 24 months? And you can see
Hmm.
them literally go, no. It's like, and it's like I want to go, yes, right? And it's not about, when I came to your training initially, I wanted to get another skill. I want to always be sharpening my axe. And
Right.
really what shifted for me is it's a whole nother language. And it's really a different cognitive load. And it's not about I won and Sandy lost, nor
Hmm.
is it a win-win. It's, one of the books that I recommend that people read is by John Maxwell, Many Communicate, Few Connect. And these skills
Yes.
gave me a way to connect with people that were not interested in connecting with me, nor was I probably, but it's necessary for these kids to win. It's necessary for advocates to win and teachers to win. So, kind of talk about, if you can, and we'll kind of break it up, talk about no oriented questions because that's just it works on everybody except for my
Right.
husband. My husband's like, Sandy, you say that. I'm like,
That's the
"He-"
problem when you have coaching, though, that everyone goes, what are
yeah,
you
my husband's like,
doing?
I know what you're doing. I'm like,
Yes. Well, there's this thing called yes addiction. We as people love to hear yes. Yes makes us feel good. We get happy ears when we hear yes. And the problem is we hear yes, and then we think we have an agreement, and we don't have an agreement. We
you
have
don't.
a yes, and there's a lot of fake yeses. So we don't like yes. At the Black Swan group, we prefer no. People like to say no. So instead of trying to push people for a yes and making them uncomfortable and making them feel like they're being trapped and making them feel like they're stuck in this commitment, we tell people anytime you want to ask somebody a question and you're looking for a yes, flip it around just a little bit so that they can say no, but it means yes for you, because people feel safe when they say no. People
Right.
feel good when they say no. And the thing that kills me though is you'll and I'm going to give this example because it's one of my favorite examples is when you call somebody up and you say, hey, do you have a few minutes to talk? And they go, ooh, do I have a
Yeah.
few minutes? And if I have a few minutes, I want to talk to you. If I want to talk to you, I don't want to talk about what you want to talk about. You've just exhausted them in literally 2.2 seconds.
Yeah.
So instead, call them up and say, hey, is now a bad time? Because they're going to go, no, because they want to say no really bad. And sometimes they want to say no so bad, they just say no. And then they realize, oh man, I just thought I would talk. So you give it, what you're doing essentially is you're asking people permission if you can carry on this conversation. And the thing is, if they say, oh my gosh, you know what? Yeah, it really is a bad time. I'm getting ready to do this. You can say, would you be against calling me back as soon as you're finished? Or would you be against us setting up another time for an appointment to finish this? Would you be against? Would it be a bad idea? Is it ridiculous, for us to do this? Any of those ways, there's a lot of different ways you can phrase a no oriented question. You just have to kind of practice. But if you have questions that you ask when you go into these meetings every single time and you're asking those questions, flip them around to no and see what you get,
Right.
because it does make a difference in people. It's a human nature thing. It does make a difference when they're able to say no. It makes them feel good. So
Right.
you let them do that, it bumps you up a little bit.
Yeah. A great book for this is Start with No by Jim
Jim
Camp.
Camp. Yep.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But these skills are, and you're gonna go back and you're gonna honor this and write them all down. And I've taught them to in what little way that I have to my daughter, and she's amazing. She's just like her mother, and a little bit assertive. And she'll call me and she goes, "I just black swan somebody." And by the way, it's legal. It's legal on all the continents. I just want you to know. I just black swan, but it changes outcomes, and it changes outcomes. I did it the other day for checking out at a hotel in Fairfield, Texas, and it wasn't a heavy lift, but I got to get my reps in, right? And I went up to the desk and I said, "I'm probably going to be your biggest problem today." He's like, "No, ma'am." I said, would you be opposed to me checking out later? And he was like, no. I was like, I'm calling Sandy. And so it changes. It's not, obviously, we're talking about in an IEP meeting, but we
Mhm.
have got to be able to connect and be in community with people. Because if you have
Yes.
a child with a disability, it's from 3 years old to 22. It's a long date that you're having. And
Hmm.
every year, let's say we get this great group, we get Sandy, we get Michaela, we get Alicia as teachers. And you and I all know come August 10th, we got to do it again. So
Yeah.
while it's important that we show up with our two little tiny files and all
Oh,
of
well,
our information, I have to connect. If you cannot connect with people, just don't attend. And so,
right.
kind of talk about labels, which is a heavy lift for me, but once I got it, I got it. Kind of talk about the one that I use all the time, really when meetings get heated.
Hmm.
And I call it "it demands an answer," which is not what you guys call, but it requires a response instead of you don't want to get yes and no back from people. Seems like you have a reason for saying that.
Yep.
And I've learned to not go, seems like everybody's for saying that. You don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Don't do the camera. Like,
Yep. Tone of voice is everything.
yeah, it seems like you have a reason for that.
Yeah.
Talk about labeling.
So labeling is what we call verbal observations. You're actually looking at what's happening with the other side. It can be an emotion you're seeing from them, the dynamic that they're in, the circumstances that surround them, and you're actually going to label whatever you see. So, I mean, a simple way to say, if you see someone who's kind of, actually, I'm going to tell people how to deal with their kids, because if you have kids of a certain age and you ask them questions, they get defensive or they ignore you. You know, how are you doing today? Fine. What did you do at school today? Nothing. So instead, read the dynamic when they come home from school. That's what labeling is all about. It's taking whatever you observe on the other side and verbalizing it. So when they come home and they're like, you go, wow, seems like today was a rough one. And they'll go, yeah. And then they'll start talking to you because you didn't ask them a question. So it's taking what you see and labeling it. Now, there are different ways to structure it. We offer you four. There's a bunch of different ways to do it, but there, we call it crawl, walk, run. When you're crawling, you're going to use seems like, sounds like, looks like, feels like, and whichever one of those speaks to you, is what you go with. If you are an auditory learner, most of the time, it looks like speaks to you. So when you say it looks like, it registers in your brain. And as you're
Right.
listening to someone talk, you can go, it looks like, and it helps you. It seems like is what I tend to go to. It's more for people who are kind of kinesthetic learners. They learn by doing. If you're an auditory learner, it sounds like tends to speak to you. It
Right.
feels like it's kind of this little anomaly because feel is a word that some people are really comfortable with and some people
Some people
really
really are.
aren't.
Yeah.
I tend to use it when it's like a really deep thing. Otherwise, I'm assertive just like you are. So I'm just like, the feel thing is like, I have to be careful when I use it because I go, it feels like, and I'm like, are you buying that I'm saying this? Because I'm really assertive. So
Right.
it feels coming out of me sometimes doesn't come across as genuine. So once you figure out what speaks to you, that's what you say in your mind. It's kind of your mantra. As you're having a conversation, you're going, it seems like, seems like, seems like. And as soon as the person stops talking, you go, it seems like. And if you just let your intuition take over for you, it'll fill in the words because whatever they're presenting to you is what you're going to label. And one thing I will tell everybody, you have to be listening. Our skills are predicated on you being a good listener. You can't be so up in your head thinking about what you're going to say next that you're not paying attention to the other side. We call this tactical empathy, and people, get really worried about that tactical word because they think ninjas and with long guns and masks on. But we say that because it's calibrated. The use of this is very calibrated. With tactical empathy, you don't have to like the person that you're talking to. You don't even have to be nice to them. You don't have to care about them at all. But when you use the right tone of voice and you use these skills and you genuinely are listening to what they're saying, it comes across as genuine and it sets up what we like to call reciprocity. Because when you use empathy with someone and they feel very heard and very understood, because that's what the goal is, they have an obligation to return that favor.
Right.
So it's that reciprocity kicks in. So when you're so nice and you're showing so much empathy to them, when the time comes, they feel like they owe you. And so a lot of times that obligation comes back, and it's very helpful if you're at a point in this meeting where you're trying to get certain things done and for some reason it's not working out and you've used empathy up to this point, then, when you push that little bit harder for what you want, they're like, oh, okay, because you've shown so much empathy that they feel like they owe you. And it's sometimes the way to get that last little thing that you really want, that you need for that student.
Right. I think one thing that you taught me a bunch of things, but so I was like, oh, it seems like you're an awful person. Sandy's like, no, we don't say that. No, that's not.
No.
Because that's my opinion. That is my
Yes.
opinion based on the emotion that I'm sensing. And what I tell
Yes.
everybody is your emotions have zero intellect, whether they're high or low. And so one of the great things that Sandy taught me, which you guys can use when you're at an IEP meeting, if you're an advocate, or if you're on the school-based member side, is she said, it seems like you really care about teaching children, or it seems like you really care about your students' outcomes. And so that we, the truth is the truth. We really are here for one reason, the student. But because we come in with such different frameworks, and it's respectfully, in my opinion, set up to be adversarial from the gate, you have to be ready and overcome. So, Sandy, kind of talk about whether it's, two of my favorite things, no-oriented questions and labeling. Talk about a parent, an IEP lead, the diagnostician, the principal, the football coach. What sort of pre-questions, or I call them sentence starters, like we say in school, would they have for labels and no-oriented questions on their in front of them? Because what I find at most meetings is people just go, is this the meeting? And
Yeah.
I do it too, right? You get so used to it, you just wing it. And what you cannot do with these skills is wing it, because I'm going to defer back to what I've done for 57 years, right? So
Yep.
talk about those sentence starters, or those really kind of a framework that you can have. As I always say that we prepare for war, assume consensus, and it's somewhere in the middle that happens. So,
Yeah.
but 99% of that is preparation. So what would be their sentence starters or really good labels, or no or any questions?
So I like the one you already said. It seems like you really care about student outcomes. What you want to do is you want to assume the positive about everyone in the room.
Right.
And then you're going to label that positive. So if you have a gen ed teacher there that might not know what's going on, you can even, because if they're sitting there like I was in that first meeting going, I have no clue what I'm supposed to be doing here. You can look at that person and you can say, seems like this may be your first meeting, or let me know if you have any questions. It seems like, this can be a little overwhelming when you've never done one before. And then you just, because what you're trying to do is demonstrate that you're hearing someone and demonstrate that you understand what they're doing there. So with a parent, you could look at that parent very easily and say, it seems like coming to these meetings all the time maybe can be a little frustrating. You're demonstrating, because it is. I mean, it is. You have the child, you're dealing with the child all the time. Then you have to come to these meetings at the school to figure out more about dealing with the child. And it does get overwhelming for a parent of a special needs child. So, that's just demonstrating a little bit of understanding of their world and where they're coming from. It's the same with the principal. First of all, you want to be nice, because being likable, people are 6 times more likely to do what you want and like to deal with you if you're likable. So you want to be likable. That just involves smiling and this sounds disingenuous, but fake it till you make it. If you smile at someone and you're focused on them and you're acting like you're the most important thing in the world right now to me, you can do that with anyone in that room.
Right.
And also, when you catch a weird vibe from somebody, you want to point that out, because people come into those meetings with negative feelings. And like you said, you don't know where they've been during the day. You don't know what's happening. You don't know they just had a fight with their spouse on the phone and now they have to come into this IEP meeting. So, you want to pay attention to that. If you see someone that seems a little disengaged or seems a little, put out by being there, you can just look at them and go, wow, it looks like you've had a rough day. And they're going to go, yes. And just the fact that you noticed that and understood it is going to change how they act in that meeting moving forward. Because when people come in with negative feelings, it tends to send the meeting in a negative way. So as you're observing what everyone is doing, how everyone is interacting, you want to call out those negatives, because by calling them out, you're getting rid of the elephant in the room that's going to trample all over everything. And you're diffusing that negative, because if you leave it sitting there, it's going to fester and it's going to make things worse for you in the meeting. So if you notice someone in the meeting is doing something negative, feeling something negative, just very simply before the meeting gets started, just say, wow, looks like you've had a really rough day. And just let them feel heard for just a second. It'll change everything as they move forward. Now, as far as coming up with labels and go-to labels, that's something that everybody within their special education teams. I know at school we have like a special education team there that, you know, they each have assigned, the students each have a different one of them assigned. So
Right.
you can get together as, don't try to do this in whole cloth by yourself. Get together with your team members and say, when you come in to these meetings, what vibe have you gotten from the principal? And then come up with go-to labels you can go to if they seem distracted, if they seem negative. If you see a parent that looks confused, don't just let that go and flip to the next page, address it. Because it's only going to get worse. It's going to compound in the next meeting because they didn't understand this one.
Right.
So
Yeah, you can simply say, Sandy, it seems like you have a question. That is
Yeah.
such, and I, you know, I understand schools are busy and we're like number 45, number 47. This is somebody's child. You're
Yes.
planning for a whole year. And that little bit of connection to the parent would change how they feel, right? So
Yes,
can I ask you a question, even though I
absolutely.
just did it? What do you do with interrupters? I always train on, there's usually two, I have a training called There's a Mole in My Meeting. And I call them the gusher or the interrupter. They're both highly suspicious, right? And they're usually somebody from the district level. They don't teach, they don't diagnose, they don't evaluate, they're not the para, they're not the parent.
Yep.
Usually there to stop any spending that's not necessary, right?
Right.
So let's start with the interrupter. And so you have
So
that, I've seen that in your classes. What
yes,
would you do with that?
let's role play it. Be the interrupter.
Sandy, I know that you're bringing that up right now. You have a lot of questions, but we have to stick to the agenda, Sandy. We have to stick to the agenda.
Okay. It seems like we're in a rush today to get finished.
Yes, we are. We have other kids. I know we have other things to do today, and these teachers are out of class right now, Sandy.
Okay. So see, this is when sort of me comes out. I'd be like, shut up, you don't know. No, that's not the way to go. So reacting is what you have to watch out for. Okay. You want to respond to this interruption. Okay. Seems like we may be taking up a little bit too much time. And then this is, notice my voice. Seems like we may be taking up a little bit too much time. Low and slow. Because whenever somebody's doing something, that was up here. Because when they get going and they want to shove you, it's because they're going like this. You want to slow them down. In order to slow them down, you have to be slow. So that's when, you know, seems like we may be taking a little longer than you think we should be. I mean, as long as you have a good tone of voice, you can say anything to anybody. Now, if you have sarcasm, so this is Karen, you and I are sisters from another mister that have this
I have a
thing going
splash
on.
of sarcasm, just a splash.
Yes. So the sarcasm is a problem. So you really, and this is where this, I'm sorry, Karen, I'm throwing you under the bus. That was an accusation audit for anyone who doesn't know. They're the amazing things. So when you come out with some sarcasm, it changes everything, because when you insert sarcasm, especially in one of these meetings, it's going to tank everything downhill just a little bit. So you want to make sure that you're keeping as much sarcasm out of your voice. And it's hard, especially when you've got that district person in there that's kind of a jerk, and you're just, all you want to do is reach across the table and, you know, choke them, and you can't. Another way to deal with something like that, and you heard me mention accusation audit a minute ago, is when someone's coming at you like that, you're going to say, this is going to sound really harsh. We're just going to have to take as long as we take until the parent understands what we're doing. And you call, basically, you're going to let them, I'm about to punch you in the face. This is going to sound really harsh. This is going to come across as kind of mean. And then you're going to go, yeah, I'm sorry, but the meeting is just going to have to take as long as it takes until this parent understands what's happening with their child. What that does is it puts them on notice and lets everyone else in the meeting know that I'm here for this kid, and I don't care what your problem is. Take your next meeting to a different room is what you're essentially saying. You know, if you have to leave, get out. But we're dealing with this because this parent deserves this time to deal with their student. And that's the kind of thing where after that meeting, you need to have a conversation with that person. And then you need to go up and say, I'm sorry if you know, if that came across as, you know, me being pushy or me calling you out. And then you let them have their say. They're going to vent on you for a little bit. And then you just say you're sorry again. And, you know, next time we'll try to go a little faster if we can, and then you leave. Because you don't want to burn a bridge there. You want to call them out, because if they're, especially if you know this person, they do this at every IEP meeting, there's something called an iMessage. So if you're in every IEP meeting with this district person and they continually interrupt, that's counterproductive behavior.
Yes.
And so an iMessage is what you use to take care of that counterproductive behavior. Now, I message people are, if you've ever been in therapy, you don't have to tell us. I'm just saying, if you've ever been in therapy, yeah. Oh, no, no volunteers. You know that iMessages are, I feel this way when you do this because blah, blah, blah. That's not how we use the Black Swan group. At the Black Swan group, it is a very assertive move. It is a punch in the face. It's you saying, when you continually interrupt, I feel as if we're not going to get anything accomplished because we're not able to have the conversation that we need to have.
That was huge. I hope y'all wrote it down. That was so good.
So, I mean, especially if you know, if that person, now, if this is the first time you're in this meeting with this person and they do that, be a little gentler. I'm
Right.
sorry if this sounds harsh. You know, we need to make sure the parent understands. That's all you need to say. And then just they'll sit back. But if it's that person that does it every single time, they need to be put in their place. So when you constantly interrupt, I feel like this is just going to take us even longer because we can't stop until this parent understands what we're doing for their child. So, I mean, yeah.
So there's the interrupter, which is mid-level management. And then I'm going to speak for everybody else so that you don't talk about how many crimes we've committed at the school district. So I'm talking to Sandy. She's the occupational therapist. So I'm saying, Sandy, Billy's really struggling with sensory and fine motor. Would the committee be opposed to considering more time of direct instead of just consult? And then lo and behold, here comes the interrupter, and she answers for you. I'm gonna let you do that once. How do we respond to that? I have the Karen way, which you've already trained on that. What would be the Black Swan way?
Let that person have their say and then turn around and direct. Seems like you might have an opinion on it.
Okay.
Seems like you may have a different answer for that. I mean, just let them know, okay, I'm going to let you have your talk because you're the squawker over here making noise. Go ahead and squawk, squawk, squawk. But you're wasting time now because I'm not taking that answer from you. I'm now going to go back to the person that I asked in the first place and say, seems like you might have something to add to that and let them have their say.
So I had this lovely quote the other day in a meeting. I like to repeat things. If you're going to say something goofy, I'm going to repeat it. I have a microphone. And she said, Karen, you brought this up over and over again, the law. And we haven't done that yet. So we can admire the problem or move on. I probably didn't have the best response. I had a response. I said, I don't know that I've ever heard something more offensive than what you just said. We're not admiring anything. We need to rectify what's not happening for this little boy. So I'm certainly we're going to try that. But when I tell you that these persons wouldn't let me just pivot and keep talking, they would keep interrupting. I think Sandy told you, and you've said it before, that's their boss coming in the room. And they're like,
yes.
So when it happens twice, then what do you do?
That same person, you mean interrupting, like the one that just cut you off from getting the answer?
For the teacher, the service provider.
Yes. So then you can say, when you constantly interrupt and speak for everyone, I feel like I'm not getting the answers that I need because the things that I'm looking for need to come from the people who do the job.
Well, I've given you the answer, Sandy. You're just not happy with it.
I thought you were telling me.
No, that's really what they say to us at meetings. So we'll just have to move on. We're just going to have to move on.
So it seems like this issue is not important enough for you to take care of for the student. Put it back on them.
Okay.
Call it out. And that's the thing. The thing that you guys have to know about these IEP meetings is everything is for the student. So if somebody interrupts, if somebody tries to divert, if somebody tries to cut you off, if somebody tries to say we don't have funding, you bring it right back to, so it seems like we're not going to try to do our best for the student. That should be a go-to label in all those instances.
We're making that a shirt, we're selling it.
Yeah. There you go.
So let me ask you a couple of questions that we've had, and then we're going to open up the Q&A because we have 7,490 questions. So we are blessed that probably over 2/3 of the people that we serve, train, are school-based members. As you know, as an educator, say it with me, 0 training as it relates to special education, the spirit of the law, the letter of the law, and application of the law. But other than that, and while we've come out of the pandemic, we have a special education teacher shortage. We have a teacher shortage, but we had one December 2nd in 1975 when we started. So there has been this influx of people. Sandy, you're going to be the special education teacher. And you're like, but I'm not a special education teacher. Sandy, you're doing a great job. Don't forget your why. And people are being shoved into positions that they're contacting us. They're not certified or credentialed. And I do trainings on federal filings and state filings or
Mhm.
due process hearings. And when we call a witness, we're not calling the principal that was the interrupter. We have to call the para who was being shoved into the role and that she's not equipped for. So
Mhm.
kind of first question is, how does an employee at the school address that with their leadership?
Mhm.
And then, well, we'll start with that. How does the employee at the school district go, I don't believe I'm quite qualified to be the special educator yet?
Yeah. So for me, I'm just thinking as a criminal justice CTE teacher, it would be like you trying to tell me to teach algebra. I can barely do 2 + 2. So you know what? Go ahead and put me in charge of algebra. You're going to see straight F's in there because we won't even talk about math. So it would be more of those things. It seems like you want me to train this child, work with this child in an area that I've never been trained in, because that is, it's putting it back on them. So in other words, I'm letting you know I don't have this training and I'm not comfortable doing this. So when the crap comes downhill, you're the one that's going to catch it because I just told you I'm not comfortable with this. And the thing is, I know as a teacher, if they came to me and said, there's not a special ed teacher, but this kid wants to take your class, so you're going to have to deal with, there can't be any kind of, I forget what the person that comes in and
In-class
sits.
support person.
Yes, there's not going to be an in-class support person, so you have to deal with this person. And so it's like, okay, I'm never going to tell a child that I don't want them to take my class. I'm not going to tell them go away, but also depending on their situation, I can't teach a whole class and also deal with the student.
Right,
So
serve that student.
something is going to drop. It's either going to be the rest of the kids in the class because I have to focus on that one, or it's going to be that one because I can't focus on that one because I'm only one person. There's 30 kids in my class. So you just have to speak up and let it be known that, it seems like you're going to put down on paper that I am this child's special education teacher, even though I do not carry that endorsement.
Yes.
And that's what you say. Or you can flat out say, this may come across as rude. This may come across as disappointing to you. I'm not willing to do this because I don't have that endorsement. I don't have
Perfect.
that training. I don't have anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Perfect. So we do a lot of trainings, and one of the things I'm training and equipping people to do is to collect this 4-letter word called data, like I made it up. And so I train people that you take data on accommodations. It's a legal requirement under the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 and IDEA. And then you need
Mhm.
to take data on IEP goals. And so we have some very excited people come and take our training, and they run into their principal, Sandy. Karen said we need to take data on IEP goals, and they pat them on the head and go, "You're doing a great job." So what would, when somebody finds out new information, right? We're all training for training, and the principal says, "You don't need to do that. We're never going to get in trouble for that."
It seems like you think not providing the information and getting called out on the carpet because we're violating the law is an option.
That
I mean,
makes me
you got to
nervous.
be,
Yeah.
well, you have to. The thing is, if you've got a principal that's saying that, there's more problems than this, because if they're shirking on this responsibility, they're shirking everywhere else too. So you might as well be the one to call them out, because the thing is, a lot of people in schools feel like, I mean, and this, I'm speaking kind of as a gen ed teacher. When I first started, I'm like, what do all these IEPs mean, and why do I have 6 kids in here that I have to do 6 special things for? And what, as a career switcher who didn't have any idea what, except for my kids went to school. It's about as much as I knew about education. I didn't have any idea all the things involved that teachers do. So when I started seeing all this stuff, I was like, what exactly do I have to do with this? What exactly do I have to do with this? And so then everybody would complain, and I was one of them until I really understood what was happening. But they would say, I have to do this report like every so often. I have to, the caseworker sends me this stuff and I have to write all this crap about this kid. And it's like, oh my gosh, I have 3 million other things to do. It really doesn't take that long. It takes longer for teachers to complain about it than it does to just sit and write. It's one student, and you just sit there and, and you don't get them all the time. You get them, once every couple of months, and you write out what you need to write out and you send it back. And I think when you're dealing with teachers who don't want to do that paperwork, that's where you need to demonstrate an understanding of the extra burden that you're putting on them. And it sounds stupid to you, but remember, when you're using tactical empathy, you're looking at it from the perspective of the other person.
Right.
Your perspective doesn't matter.
Doesn't
So when
matter.
you're talking, no, and when you're talking to a teacher who's like, why do we have to keep doing this? You can say, Accusations audits. I know this is such a burden. This must just feel like we keep coming to you and asking you for more information. Now, remember, when you're using remember, I haven't told you, when you're using an accusations audit, you don't have to explain it. You just come out and say it. You know, you probably feel like we just keep sending these pieces of paper out and just asking you for information. And then you just let it sit. It's like a drop the mic moment. You just sit there and you let them feel, yes. And then they go, yeah, exactly. Then they feel so understood by you. And then you can just say, I'm sorry. You know, we don't do this basically to give you guys more work. We do this because the students really need it. And it has to be done for them to be able to get what they need through the school district. And it's a one teacher at a time kind of thing, but you have these teachers in school, and I'm trying to come up with a new book that will speak to classroom management, that will speak to bringing tactical empathy to the classroom. So I'm hoping that it'll be a new communication standard that will be introduced into schools, and that teachers can start using it with their students, and teachers can start using this with their administration and with each other, because it makes communication just that much better. It's just easier when, and it's human nature, so you're never going to be perfect at it. You're still going to be doing assertive things, Karen, because you're Karen, and I'm still going to do assertive things because I'm me and I'm assertive. And so every once in a while, somebody's going to say something, and Michaela from the Black Swan group is here with me, and she can probably tell you that there are times when I've been like, "Are you kidding me?" And I totally forget where I'm coming from because I'm a human being, and we're not perfect.
Right.
You know, you just have to try the majority of the time to see things from the other person's perspective. And if you can do that, and you can address whatever they're afraid of, and you can address whatever it is that's bothering them, and you can label what's going on with them, and they feel heard and they feel understood, it's a win.
It's a win. And that's what it's about. And kind of as I'm listening to Sandy, and you know, I can use this when I'm reading the present levels. I can read the present levels and say, it seems like he's really you can label written things. You can label the goal. You can label it's the schedule of services. It seems like he needs a high level of support. I mean, it's all right there for you. You can use it as a teacher with another coworker. You can use it with your husband, with your mother-in-law, with the lady at Starbucks. And I am so grateful to have found Chris Voss and Never Split the Difference in this team. And I, would ask you to go and at minimum sign up for their emails. They have amazing printouts. You know, I'm the queen of the printout. Skills. They have digital products. They have in-person trainings, and they have private coaching, which I've participated in all of them. So Sandy, you and I could talk forever about this. Let's go ahead and open up the chat. I don't know.
Can I add one thing?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if there's any women that are interested in doing a retreat, but we have a women's retreat, women only, women's retreat coming up at the end of October. It's going to be in Phoenix, Arizona. It's going to be a 2-day retreat, and we actually have a guest coming. If you've ever heard of Molly Bloom from Molly's Game, the movie Molly's Game and the book Molly's Game, she's going to be there as a special guest speaker, and she's going to spend the time with us. She's going to go through the conference with us. So we're really excited about it. We got a lot of great content. And it's going to be just a great couple of days.
And I'm going to
You're going to go? Yes,
I'm going to be there. Right.
Karen
and in
was
Arizona,
there the last one.
In Arizona, your hair always looks good. I just want to say that. I just want to say that. Yeah, great location. We're super excited about that. We'll put all that information. Any questions that you have later about products or training or any things we talk about, you can always shoot us an email at advocate@special-education academy, and we'll get back to you.
Or to Michaela, because her email is going to be attached to that.
All the things. Yes, and we'll get all of that to the Black Swan crew. So Alicia, do we have any friends in the chat that have questions for myself or Sandy?
Only 752.
Oh, it's good. 10 minutes.
I hope you got time.
Yeah.
Okay, so first one up. We had so many meetings for my daughter who has been denied for an IEP twice for hearing impairment and now anxiety. They are going to add anxiety to her 504. What is a powerful accommodation to help her with testing anxiety?
That's a you question.
That's a me question. So again, we're looking at Andrew F. March 22nd, 2017, which is the standard from the U.S. Supreme Court. And it cleanly says that we must carefully consider and write an IEP appropriate in light of the child's unique circumstance for them to make progress. So I would go back and say, I'm concerned. Would you be opposed to providing her some direct instruction to mitigate the acuity of her disability? And based on that answer, that opens the door for an IEP. You're usually pretty close at a 504 and IEP. A 504 is a civil rights law. It was never intended for education. That's why I didn't say education. But we know teachers are doing education. So I would ask, what is it you're doing to provide her those services? Because if she's DHH, deaf and hard of hearing, she might need an ECC, an expanded core curriculum. She needs, you know, a voice, a lavalier that they use for to connect her hearing aids, any of those pieces. Maybe she needs an interpreter. Anxiety is going to fall under IEP or 504. Just remember, there's no teaching on a 504. It's my experience, if a child has a disability, we need to teach them something. We're doing one thing in special education, teaching a child strategies to self-manage their disability. So I would just have the conversation with them. What would be a strategy that we could teach her to self-manage her disability? And then based on that answer, I would say, would you be opposed to trialing an IEP for one instructional year? And hopefully she'll have acquisition of this and she won't need it. But again, that would you be opposed gives them what they want to be anyway, in charge, and an opportunity, and in a good way, right? That's why they do that. An opportunity to resolve that problem for you.
I'm so proud of you, Karen.
This is Karen 2024, not Karen 2023.
Correct.
It was funny when I first took this training, people go, what are you doing? And people have been like, it's me. I grew up my bangs.
That's the difference.
I love you both so much. Okay, so I think you both could probably answer this question. Parent wants a shortened school day because their child is presenting ASD behaviors, examples are scratching, biting, etc., and does not want to engage in an FBA or BIP process. I want to honor the discussion, but want parents to consider giving consent for an FBA and collaborate with a BIP. Any suggestions on having the conversation and asking for consideration?
I'll let Sandy start with that.
Yeah, I don't understand half of what that was about.
So they're asking for an evaluation for behavior. So we do the evaluation so we can figure out the function of it. And the parents are avoiding, they want to just go home. So you're the principal.
The parents are the problem. The parents are the problem.
Yes.
Okay.
So you as the principal, how would you keep them at the table and the kid in school?
So my first thought is figure out what the parents are afraid of. What is it? You know, are they afraid of some kind of liability because the kid is going to do something at school that's going to get them in trouble, or make them have to come up with something to reimburse the school because they do something terrible, or because they bite another child, then they're looking at some kind of legal problem. There's fears there. There's a fear somewhere with those parents. And that's the reason why they don't want them to stay in school the whole day. They want them to go home. So you need to figure out what that fear is, and you need to identify, you need to label that fear. Seems like there's a reason why you're not comfortable leaving them in the school the whole day. And then let them tell you what that is. If you open the door for them to tell you and you act like you really want to hear it, you got to be genuine about this, because you don't know what they're going to say. They could say, who knows what they're going to say. It could be that, you know what, yeah, he or she is mean in school, but we also need help with the rent, so we need him to work at McDonald's after school. I mean, there could be a weird reason that you don't know. There's all kinds of stuff that goes on. Never assume that you understand why someone's doing something unless you get them to tell you why. So it seems like you have a reason for really wanting them to come home early.
Yeah, or watching their siblings. Here's what I would say as a school-based member. I certainly understand, and we appreciate you trying to alleviate the amount of time that it takes to serve him. Would you be opposed to us doing a functional behavior assessment that will give us some information to better educate him? And then more importantly, that will provide him legal protections so that that's taken into account. If there is a disciplinary need or damage to the building, would you be opposed to us trying to serve him in that way? And that's
nice.
So because a lot of times when people hear that, they think you're going to figure out the reason to suspend him, to send him to jail, to make us pay for something, like Sandy said. So you want them to understand that it's not to, aha, we got you. It's to better serve him. Special education does one thing. It opens the door for services. It's not to penalize a student, but there are processes that we must follow so that we have met our obligation to identify any areas of concern in need of special education or related services. And we look forward to serving your young man all day long. It's what we do here.
Perfect. Okay, if they insist on retention, but you know they are not doing things with fidelity and have exhausted all measures, what do you recommend? My son is in first grade.
So I always wonder who's they. So again, you want to tease that out. It seems like you have a reason for wanting to retain Billy, and then I'm really good at listening, so I can get as my husband says, I'm a professional zinger, and I have to have the last word, and then I go, no, I don't, because see. So instead of listening, so I can have a better answer than you, then close your mouth. And I'm preaching to me and listen to what he's saying. If he's saying, I want to retain him because, Sandy has only acquired a third of her language arts skills, 40% of her reading skills, lean into that. It won't matter when you're 18, but it's going to matter if you walk into second grade and you can't wash your hands and you can't do silent reading with your friends. So the gap's just going to get bigger if we don't address it, but it seems like you have a reason for wanting retention. And then, which is the hardest thing for me to do, to just close my mouth and listen and then write notes. And then, okay, so tell me what you, and then it seems like you could explain to the parents the pros and cons to that. Let them do it. We're so busy as advocates speaking for other people, right? Which is what the word advocate means, but we're always missing something, right? So it seems like you have a reason for saying that. It seems like you'd be able to explain, Sandy, to the parents what the pros and cons would be and step out because they're the principal, you're the parent, right? But the skills are a game changer. It changes the conversation. One of the things I train people is to honor people at the table and giving them their due. They are the principal. You're not, no matter what a great advocate you are, a parent, you're not the principal. And would you be opposed to letting, Sandy and her husband share about their concerns for retention? Put all the chips in the middle of the table with these great skills in a way that really drives thoughtful and productive communication.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
This one is specifically for Miss Sandy. It says, Sandy, you mentioned families not speaking English. There really aren't protections to guarantee certified interpreters of spoken languages. How do you approach meetings where the translators are clearly not providing quality translations?
It's a chord with me because at the police department, we used to have similar problems because we try to talk to people and we couldn't, we have to get someone to interpret. And it would be one of these things where I would say, ask them, blah, 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 blah. They turn to the person and say, da, 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 da. Then they'd have a 5-minute conversation back and forth. And they turn to me and go, no. And I would say, what just happened? Yeah. So you have to impress upon whoever the translator is. And one thing I did see that really disturbed me sometimes was they would use the student as the translator, and that's no bueno. It's not good. It's not
the
good.
lady from the front office, I think she speaks Portuguese. She doesn't.
Yeah. I guess it depends, but I almost would rather say, would anyone be against putting this meeting aside until we can find an appropriate interpreter to help this parent understand what's happening? Because one of the things I hate that they do is they just, like you said before, they flip the pages and have them sign. They have no idea what they're signing. They don't understand anything. So you, as a person in the room that sees that, have a right to speak up and say, seems like everyone is okay with this parent not understanding what we're doing, and see who and just literally go quiet. And the person who should be speaking up at that point is the principal or the district, somebody in there, that, because once you raise that concern, it's obvious to those people that you're not going to ignore this. They have to deal with it, because once you point it out and everyone's not on board with just ignoring the fact that this parent has no clue what's happening, they can't let it sit. And if they do let it sit, then there's some kind of recourse somewhere, and Karen will be better to understand that. But yeah, you can't let that stand, and you've got to just lay something out there and then just shut your mouth. Point out that elephant in the room, that this parent literally has no clue what's happening here. Seems like we're all okay with this, and see what they say.
And how long do you wait for them to say something? 7.7 seconds and you just jump in?
You do what we call read the room, because if you speak up too soon, you let them off the hook. But if they're sitting there and and you see 3 people in the room and one of them is like really uncomfortable, really uncomfortable, really uncomfortable. If it's not the principal or person who needs to address that, you let them sit, because the person in the room that needs to address that issue, you let them sit. Now, it's really hard, especially if you're assertive, because when people are quiet, assertive people are like, you must want to hear me talk because you're being quiet. But if you just let them sit in that silence for a little bit, especially a principal or a district person who should know better than to be doing what they're doing, don't offer up any excuse. Don't let them off the hook. Just sit there and look at them and wait for a response. And your thing is, don't look at them like this. No, you're going to look at them like, I'm so concerned. Can you please, this is not right. And then let them address the issue. When you give people silence, what happens is they end up negotiating against themselves, which works for you. So, but you have to really, really, take a pen and, just do one of these things, just quiet. One of these things that one of our clients came up with, if you are having trouble with dynamic silence, you want to have the word wait stuck in your head, because wait stands for why am I talking?
Why? Yeah.
So wait. So whenever you feel like you're trying to give silence and you want that person literally to address what's happening in the room, you just say in your head, wait. Don't let them off the hook. Don't feel bad for them. And this person that's over here that's uncomfortable is uncomfortable because they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you just called them out. I can't believe you just called them out. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen? The world's going to explode. They'll live. Let them sit. They're okay.
One of the things I just want to add to that, one of the things when we do a lot of training about compensatory time and negotiating settlements, and Sandy says, we'll send you to ESY. That's going to be unacceptable for my client. And then I'm just quiet and they're like, okay, it's suffocating for people. It's suffocating for me. But I don't take off my earrings. I don't do all that. I just go, that's going to be unacceptable for my client. And it's just information. It's not, what are you thinking? Don't do all that. And then they will literally, as Sandy's trained me, they will negotiate. Okay, what if we get to a private teacher for 80 hours to come to your house with a platter full of sandwiches? We would be amenable to that. And the same
Exactly.
thing is not just like, yeah. And it's learning to, it's self-control. I'm saying it wrong, but it's just learning to really control you so that you're not controlled by their emotionality, by their manipulation, by their fear. And any of those things you can get sucked into. And so it's not personal, it's just business. It's a business of educating the student. And when I've learned to do that, and I have notes everywhere, take it down a notch, I'm talking to me, right? Right. And that's going to be unacceptable for my client. And literally people go, and they'll look at each other like, she said no. And they start talking to me
like you're not there.
But then, this is for my clients, don't take a bologna sandwich because you're starving. Keep your mouth, don't just go, we'll take it. And that's a good starting place, Sandy. And I don't mean, I'm not trying to get, I'm asking for baseline. I'm never asking for finish line, right? But if that's not acceptable, then stick with your ask. If it's reasonable, it's applicable to the law, it's what the child needs. So that's what I mean about being, even while Sandy's talking, I'm taking notes, like I don't have the recording. You cannot be prepared enough. And you've got to go immediately and get the book and the recording. It's so stinking good. And you've got to get training from Black Swan. You've got to get in their Facebook group. You've got to get their digital products. Or I can't talk to you anymore. Can I say that? I feel like it is.
I want to point out something that you just said, because it's something, a couple things you have to remember when you're kind of in a hot seat, like what you're just talking about.
Yeah.
You can't react. You have to respond. And in order to respond, you have to slow down. If you go real fast, you're more apt to react. And when you react, it usually triggers the other side. Now I'm talking about the human nature response, because when someone comes at you hard, you get triggered. You get triggered by your amygdala gets triggered. And when your amygdala gets triggered, the prefrontal cortex, the place where all the thinking takes place, goes offline. And the problem is if someone does that to you and you get triggered, you have to learn how to just like overcome that trigger and just be like, okay, they just got my goat. And you say, wait, deep breath. Don't react back, because if you react back and you trigger their amygdala, you've got two people who are triggered, both prefrontal cortexes are offline, and you're both majorly stupid at the moment because nobody's thinking.
No,
So you just have to be careful of those triggers. Be careful that you're going to get triggered, and you need to just sit with that for a second, slow down, and do what Karen said. My client's not going to be okay with that. And then when they come back and say, well, what about da da da? Well, that's real generous and that's real nice, but that's just not going to work. It's called the phases of no. So when you want to keep saying no to somebody and they're not buying it, look that up. Phases of no. Just keep going with it.
so good. Yes, the great Alicia.
Okay, when a student is in middle school, high school, how can we get the teacher's perspective on our students? Only one teacher will show up at our IEP meetings, and we are generally limited on time.
I can talk to that.
Yeah.
I know at my school, they only ask one teacher. So I will tell you, I loved getting emails from parents. I loved parent-teacher conference night when the parent would show up, because what happens if you have a child with special needs, if you have a child that has an IEP, you want to go to all these things and you want to interact with that teacher, because the teacher who sees a parent that cares about a student takes more time with that student, because they realize they're not alone in this endeavor. Because a lot of kids come to school and they're like very misbehaved, and you try to reach out to the parents, they never answer you. But if you have a parent of a child, even if it's a child that's a real good kid in your class or getting good grades, but if that parent shows up, you have a name and a face associated with that parent, it makes you closer to that student. So when they see that a parent is more invested, a teacher will actually get more invested. That's my 2 cents. I don't know if you have 2 cents to add, Karen, but
I have like 85 cents to add. So what we're gonna do, Alicia, if we can, we're gonna stop the recording. We're all staying in the party. And then Alicia's gonna start the recording again, just so we have a good stopping place. We just want to, first of all, thank you guys for being on this training. If you want more information, you can reach out to us at Advocate Special Education Academy. We can get you the link and the QR code. We're gonna put it up right now for you to get access to all things Black Swan training. There's all of our information. We're certainly happy to connect with you. And then the QR code is going to get you to Michaela at Black Swan to make sure that you're connected to the right training to address your needs. And so we're so excited. And thank you for coming, and we'll see you guys in the next training. Sandy, would you be opposed to coming back and training our people again?
I would love to.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks, you guys. We'll see you next training. Remember, when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody.